you were able to go from $65 million in sales to over $100+ million in sales in 3 years with your sales organization. What's the key to building high-performing teams? And like you said, what is the key factor of success?
Yeah, I think there are many variables. As I reflect back on that time in my life, I also think about the employee engagement results.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I took over that organization, the Gallup score, which is Gallup is a company that does engagement surveys.
Mm-hmm.
The operation that I inherited was a 3.6 out of 5. When I left 3 years later, we're a 4.6.
Now, I have a question.
Yes.
What does that score mean? Yeah, just to break it down to our audience.
Yeah, so employee engagement, people say is how happy are you in your job, how engaged, how much extra effort will you give in your job.
Mm-hmm.
And there's I think 11 or 12 questions that Gallup uses to determine how engaged you are in your job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's other people do different or similar surveys, but we use Gallup. Mm-hmm. Does that help answer that question?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So if you ask Gallup, this was back then they would say if you increase your results 0.1 in consecutive years, they think it's a great result. Our team and I were able to increase it 0.3, 0.4, and then 0.3 again. We went from the lowest engagement score in a 4,000 person operation or location in Des Moines, Iowa, to the highest.
Wow.
So I think the sales success really was an extension of the culture and the employee engagement and helping people succeed, holding them accountable, but doing it in the right way and supportive and making tough decisions. Certain leaders were no longer in the organization because they did not align to the culture that we're trying to create, mm-hmm. which is really employee focus, which creates autonomy, right? Allow people to choose their own path, competence, and also relatedness. And then we involved our salespeople in all kinds of decisions. When it was time to conceptualize the comp plan, they were in the room. Their ideas, and they had input in how that sales plan was created. When we came up with different procedures, they were in the room with us because we want the best idea had to win. Again, that's part of our culture. How can the best idea win when not everybody's in the room?
Right. So
I think it was more of a cultural support. And then, of course, we used data. So I knew that I was transferring to academia. Mm-hmm. And I taught myself regression analysis because part of getting a PhD is statistics. And it had been many years since I took statistics. I made a midlife change, as I mentioned. And I started looking at our data. And I did some regression analysis. I'm like, well, we're doing all these things that really don't correlate to the outcome. Why are we doing them?
Yeah.
So we found 3 key drivers to sales outcomes, and my leadership team and I really focused on those 3 things. And of course, it had an effect. It's not that we ignored everything else, we just focused on those 3 things. And it helped drive success. And we also used some data to have better leads and so forth. So it's really a combination of utilizing data, and I would say probably ahead of its time, with a cultural shift to really help employees be successful. And then empower leaders to really focus on human connection, understanding, coaching, helping, but at the same time holding people accountable.
Corporate America has changed a lot in the last 30 years, and one thing that stood out to me, just to give us a little bit of context, around what time was this happening?
Middle of 2010, so 2014, 15, 16.
So this is a little bit after the 2008 recession
yes.
crisis.
Yeah,
so
much after.